Hello out there, YouTube fans. This is Princess Twilight Sparkle, and with me today are Pinkie Pie and Fauna Fashion. Hi, everyone. Long time no see. Indeed.
Yep, been a while.
Yeah. Anywho, we are now halfway through June.
Wow. We are halfway through the halfway point of the whole year. Because everyone knows that because June is the 6th month, and it's also halfway through the
We know we get it, Pinkie, halfway through the year. And today I want us to listen to a very special Thomas story.
Ooh, listen? We haven't listened to a Thomas audio story since, last year.
I know. And this one is very special.
Ooh, it is?
Yep. So, everyone, let's all keep quiet and listen to the story of Return to Sodor.
The day was cool, calm, and bright. It was springtime, you see, so the sky was mostly blue, with a few small fluffy clouds and a great big shining sun. Out on the ocean, a giant ship was returning from travels all over the world, cruising through the frothy waves, bound for a place called Sodor. Sitting on the deck of the ship was a young tank engine called Thomas, who was very happy to return home after many adventures around the world. He had 6 small wheels, a short stumpy funnel, and a short stumpy dome. His shiny blue paint sparkled in the sunlight, and he had the number 1 painted on his side.
That's
Thomas spotted the island of Sodor up ahead, and it almost looked like a line of land between the sky and the sea, which was getting bigger and bigger as the ship got closer. Now he could see all kinds of details, like the trees lined up on the shore, and houses scattered along the hills. Straight ahead, he could see Brendam Docks, where the ships bobbed up and down in the water. Large cranes lifted cargo from the decks of the ships to load onto trains that would carry them to elsewhere on the island.
Cranky, Carly,
Thomas
and
could
Big
even
Mac.
make out his good friend
Big Mickey.
Cranky, a towering metal crane painted dark green. Thomas looked out over the railing and across the sea as the great steamship blew its horn 3 times. The air at sea was misty fresh, and Thomas took in a great big breath. Thomas's eyes were wide with excitement as the ship traveled through the waves and approached the docks.
Ooh.
A gentle breeze blew in off the ocean toward the island, and it almost felt like the wind was carrying Thomas home.
Aww.
I can't wait to get home and see all my friends, he said to himself. At the docks, Cranky the crane was busy at work, his huge crane arm lifting and loading big crates of goods from the ships down onto the trains. His head towered high in the air, like a giant. Cranky wasn't always the happiest crane, but he was a hard worker and liked to keep the docks clean and tidy.
Yep.
Cranky looked out across the water and spied Thomas's ship, with Thomas Salty, look who's coming in on that ship, Cranky said. Salty looked up and couldn't believe his eyes. Good heavens, Salty replied. Looks like Thomas is arriving home early. Now that is a surprise.
Early?
The two friends looked at each other, puzzled and unsure what to do. And before long, Thomas's ship was docking. Will you look who's back on the island of Sodor, Cranky said, as he lifted Thomas up and dropped him down on the tracks.
Gently.
Ah, said Thomas, as he got himself settled. It feels good to be back on Sodor tracks. He explained to Cranky and Salty that he had the chance to arrive home a day early and jumped on the opportunity.
Ooh.
I just couldn't pass up the chance to get home early and surprise my friends, he said. Well, you've certainly surprised us, matey. Yes, indeed. That's great, Thomas, said Salty. Thomas was excited to get back to work, so he offered his help. Is there anything I can do to help out? He asked. Is there any cargo that needs to be delivered? I don't think so, Thomas, Cranky replied. We have everything pretty much covered for now. And with that, Salty hooted his horn and sped off down the tracks.
Ooh.
Cranky turned away from Thomas and went about his work.
Oh, what's this for?
Neither had any questions about Thomas's adventures around the world.
Oh.
Thomas couldn't help but feel a little upset.
Oh.
It almost felt like Cranky and Salty weren't all that happy to see him. But he shook off
That's
the
not
feeling.
true.
His friends were probably just busy with their jobs, which was understandable after all.
I think I can understand what's going on
And
right
so
now.
Thomas decided to make his way up the
Do
branch
you?
line,
Yes.
his 6 small wheels rolling along the tracks.
Just listen.
He couldn't wait to share stories about his adventures with his friends and get back to work. He chuffed through the countryside. Butterflies fluttered about. Birds chirped from the tree branches. And the children waved warmly as Thomas passed by.
At least the children are happy.
Before long, Thomas wheeshed into Knapford Station, a busy place where engines of all shapes and sizes came and went. He took a deep breath and looked about, trying to see if any of his friends were around. Now, you might think that the other engines would notice Thomas and welcome him home. And that's what Thomas was hoping, too. But nobody gave him much notice.
What?
His friend Gordon passed through the station. A large steam engine painted blue, with the number 4 on his sides. Gordon was a strong and proud engine, and he usually took time for Thomas. But all he had time to say was, "Express coming through," as he raced off down the main line,
As usual.
pulling a long line of passenger coaches. And another friend of Thomas's passed by, a strong tender engine named Rebecca,
Oh, Rebecca.
painted bright yellow, with the number 22 on her cab. Rebecca was a cheerful and happy engine, who would always sing songs and have fun as she went about her work. But she didn't even slow down as she passed him by.
Huh?
"Hey, Thomas," she said, as she zipped out of the station.
I think I have an idea of what's going on.
His friends didn't even stop to chat.
What is it, Twilight?
When Thomas came to a stop,
You'll see.
who did he see standing on the platform?
Sir Topham
But Sir
Hatt?
Topham Hatt,
I know it.
a jolly man with a finely pressed suit and a tall top hat on his head. Sir Topham Hatt was the controller of the railway, which meant he was in charge of all the rail lines and the many engines who used them. Thomas greeted Sir Topham Hatt with a smile, but he didn't get the warm welcome he was expecting.
Huh?
Thomas, Sir Topham Hatt said, "What are you doing here? We weren't expecting you back until tomorrow." Thomas explained that he arrived home a day early to surprise his friends and get back to work. "I've been away so long. I just want to be really useful," he said.
Oh.
He asked Sir Topham Hatt what needed to be done and how he could be of service and where he should start. But Sir Topham Hatt didn't seem to need any help. "Actually, Thomas, everything has been running quite smoothly since you've been gone," he explained. "We haven't much for you to do at the moment." "Oh, I see," Thomas replied.
Oh, I know where this is going. He's
Now
going.
he really was getting upset. He thanked Sir Topham Hatt
He's going to
and
think
slowly
no one
rolled
missed
out of
him.
Knapford Station.
I'm afraid you might be
He
right,
decided
Pinkie.
to go visit his branch line, which ran up north from Knapford Station all the way to Farquhar Station. Thomas was sure that somewhere along the way he would find a way to get back to work. Thomas made his way along the main line, grumbling slowly along the tracks. Now that he was feeling a little sorry for himself. As he travelled back, fluffy clouds began to cover up the sunshine.
Uh-oh.
Along the way, other engines passed by on the opposite tracks. The first was his friend Nia, a brave and playful tank engine, with an orange coat of paint and the number 18 on her cab. The second was his friend James, a speedy red engine with the number 5 painted on his side, who was always joking around. And the third was Emily, a mixed traffic engine, painted emerald green, who always had a smiling face at the end of a busy day. Now, you might think Thomas's friends would be eager to welcome him home, and
But
everyone was friendly enough. But just like the others, they sped past with nothing more than a quick hello. As Thomas turned onto his branch line, he noticed another engine about to pass him by on the
is it
opposite
who I
tracks.
think it is? Is it? Is
And
it?
it looked like a familiar face.
Is it Percy?
As the two engines approached, both of them burst into bright smiles. It was Percy,
I knew it!
Thomas's very best friend.
Shh! Pinkie!
A bright green tank engine with a friendly face and the number 6 painted on his side. The
Quiet,
two
Pinkie.
engines stopped to have a chat, and Thomas realised that Percy was pulling Annie and Clarabelle,
Oh.
2 passenger coaches that Thomas normally pulled himself. "Well, flatten my funnel," Percy said, surprised to see his friend. "We weren't expecting you home so soon, Thomas." Percy, Annie and Clarabelle smiled at the sight of Thomas. But as they began talking, they were acting a little funny. They didn't want to talk much, and nobody asked about Thomas's adventures around the world.
Oh.
"Well, why don't I get back to work on the branch line?" Thomas asked. "I'm sure there's lots to get done." But I take over the branch line. And it's been running nicely these past few weeks while you've been gone. In fact, we've got to get going. We have passengers to deliver, and we'd best not be late.
I still have an idea of where this is going.
Percy chuffed his way southward.
I think Percy just made that up because he didn't want Thomas's hopes to get up.
Leaving Thomas in a very glum state indeed. Thomas watched as his friends sped off into the distance and disappeared beyond a hill.
Poor Thomas.
Thomas's life on Sodor had always been about friendship and teamwork. But since he'd got back, it seemed like his friends didn't have any time for him. He didn't feel very much a part of the team anymore.
But that won't
His
last.
big surprise return had turned into a big disappointment. And that's when Thomas made a decision. The decision to go all the way back to Brendam Docks. It was the last place he could think of where there might be a job he could do.
Oh.
Maybe Cranky had some new cargo for Thomas to deliver. It wasn't long before Thomas arrived back at Brendam Docks,
I hope he's not thinking about
feeling
running
a little
away.
bit down in the dumps, but still excited to find a job to do. He looked up at his old friend Cranky, who was loading cargo into a boxcar for Salty the Diesel. I was wondering, Cranky, Thomas said. Isn't there anything I could do around the docks to help out? Cranky and Salty shared a look. They wanted to make Thomas happy and help him find a way to get back to work. But neither knew what to do. But then, Cranky had an idea. We might have a job for you. Isn't that right, Salty? Cranky said, looking down to Salty and giving him a wink.
Ooh.
You know, that big job coming up. Well, yes indeed there, matey, Salty replied. There's a tour to be had, and we need a tour guide. Someone who knows the island very well.
Ooh, who's the tour
If you'd
for?
be interested in helping out at all, Thomas. Cranky thought this was brilliant. Salty, that is a splendid idea, he said. Which of course is why I suggested it in the first place. Cranky and Salty explained that there was a special engine visiting from China
Wait,
who
China?
was due to arrive at the docks any minute.
I think I know who they're talking about.
A brave steam
Yes,
engine
Young Bao, I knew it.
Thomas happened to know from his travels in Asia.
Yes, Young
Young
Bao.
Bao would be responsible for pulling a passenger coach around Sodor, giving a tour of the island to a special guest.
Ooh.
Thomas had great admiration for Young Bao, so he was delighted. Young Bao was wise and worldly, but he didn't know Sodor like Thomas did. Suddenly, there was steam in his boiler and happiness in his heart.
Good.
This was Thomas's chance to prove himself to all his friends and show everyone that he could be really useful once more.
Of course, he's always
It was
useful.
only a short while later when Young Bao arrived, and Cranky lifted him off his ship and loaded him onto the tracks. He was a red steam engine, long and sleek, with black stripes down his side panels. He pulled a little red coal car behind him, called a tender, with a golden tiger painted on its sides.
I love that tiger.
Thomas and Young Bao shared a friendly hello. how, Thomas said,
Which
proud
means...
to greet Young Bao using the Mandarin word for hello, which he had learned while traveling in China. Thomas explained that he would be guiding the tour of Sodor. That sounds fantastic, said Young Bao. Cranky suggested that Thomas should start the tour by taking Young Bao up the branch line to Farquhar Quarry, and then back to Ulfstead Castle. That sounded like a marvellous idea to Thomas. And with that, the two engines were off, heading back up towards Thomas's branch line. Thomas led Young Bao towards Knapford Station, and then up the branch line, explaining the sights to his friend. There were roads, and bridges, and farms, and there were stations called Dryor, Troyrek, and Elsbridge. Along the journey, the clouds began to clear. The sun began to set.
Signifying Thomas's happy
and
mood
the day
again.
became a beautiful spring evening. As the two engines chuffed northward side by side, they began to share stories. Young Bao talked all about what life was like in China, and Thomas talked all about life in Sodor. Thomas confided in Young Bao that he was feeling left out after arriving home. He told Young Bao all about his day and how no one on the railway needed any help, not even his friends. I just feel like I don't have a job to do, Thomas explained. And that makes me feel like I'm not really part of the team.
But you are!
Young Bao listened very closely, and then he thought quietly for a few moments before replying. Thomas, I can understand how you feel, said Young Bao. But when you're part of a team, you don't always have to be the engine who's doing the biggest job.
That's right.
Or the best job. Sometimes it's okay to be the engine who's cheering on the others
That's right.
and offering to help out wherever he can,
Yeah!
just like you did today. Thomas thought about what Young Bao was saying. He thought back to his day, and he remembered something. He had offered to help each and every one he had seen. He had offered to help Sir Topham Hatt at Knapford Station, Percy on the branch line,
Exactly.
and Cranky and Salty at Brentham Docks.
Yeah!
And besides, Young Bao said, your friends still care about you just as much as they did before.
Exactly.
I'm sure there will be a job for you to do before long. Thomas realized that Young Bao had a point. He didn't always need to be the engine doing the biggest jobs.
That's
Sometimes being really useful means making sure everyone has the help they need, or
exactly.
cheering on your friends for the great work they're doing.
Precisely!
Young Bao was proud of his friend's change of heart. And just then, with the night getting darker and the first few stars beginning to shine in the sky, Thomas and Young Bao arrived at Ulfstead Castle, one of the finest buildings in all of Sodor, which had stood high on a hill for hundreds of years. Thomas and Young Bao came to a stop and rested on the tracks, turning to admire the noticed that there was a banner hanging over the castle gates.
I knew it.
It read,
Welcome home, Thomas. I knew it. A surprise party.
When a wonderful surprise chuffed and whistled
A surprise
its way
welcome party!
down the tracks. Thomas's friends arrived and came to a stop all around him, each smiling a warm smile.
You were right, Twilight.
There was Percy, Rebecca, Gordon, Nia, James, and Emily. The entire steam team had come to welcome him home.
Woohoo!
Thomas was so happy. But I thought you were all too busy for me, he said. No, silly, Percy replied. We were busy planning your welcome home party, and you threw us off when you arrived back a day early.
Oh.
And Rebecca shared more about how it all came together. It's true, Thomas, she said. Once we saw you were back a day early, we raced around the island to get everything in place for your big party.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas realized that his friends hadn't been avoiding him.
Exactly.
They were trying to keep his surprise party
A surprise.
a surprise.
Of course.
Thomas noticed another friend from the island,
Huh?
Kevin the Crane.
Kevin!
He was unloading Young Bao's cargo, and it looked like fireworks.
Ooh!
Sir Topham Hatt stepped out of the castle. Welcome home to Sodor, Thomas, he said. And Thomas couldn't have felt more at home. As the evening unfolded, a spectacular fireworks show filled the sky with bright, colourful lights. They almost seemed like they whistled up into the sky and popped like popcorn. Thomas celebrated with his friends, telling adventurous tales of his time away from home. He was so happy to be surrounded by all his friends. As the celebration continued, Thomas thought of all the many places he'd seen that day as he travelled along the railway and across the island. Without even realizing it, he'd seen all the wonderful sights of Sodor. The breezy ocean air of Brendam Docks, the bustle of Knapford Station, the quiet of the countryside,
I'm getting
the
sleepy.
bridges and tunnels
Me
of the
too.
railway, and the special surprise at Ulstead Castle. He sure was a lucky tank engine to have
he
such
is.
wonderful friends and to call the island of Sodor home. Later that night, Thomas snuggled back into his shed at Tidmouth, his heart full and his place on the island as strong as ever. There's no place like home, he thought,
Indeed.
as his shed door slowly closed shut. And after a long journey and a Another.
No.
And before he knew it, Thomas was fast and deep and sound asleep.
Happy 80th anniversary, Thomas. I love